What a way to start 2021! Last year we got Claricer Dragon as the first reveal of the year, but this time we've got the brand new Shirayuki. And oh boy, is it crazy! Stand up! Vanguard! Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to the very first Cardfight update of 2021 and even the very first video on the channel. And today we've got some new cards revealed for Premium Collection Volume 2, because not only did we get Shirayuki for Premium Collection Volume 1, we also got some new Battle Sister cards that were revealed last week, and I believe one even earlier than that, but I didn't have room to showcase the cards and talk about them, so I want to splash them into this video together with Shirayuki to give you guys an understanding of what the new cards are for the upcoming Premium Collection set, because all these 3 new cards are pretty interesting. And let's start with these new Battle Sister cards so we have an understanding and we round up the package for the new Battle Sister archetype that has of course new boss unit with Fromage. And to better understand what these new grade 1 and grade 2s will mean for the deck, let's first look back at Fromage to basically refresh our understanding of what this deck actually is. So this is the new grade 3 Battle Sister Fromage that was revealed quite a while ago as one of the first reveals together with Dauntless Drive Dragon. And basically what she does, she allows you to empower your field that all have the Battle Sister name. She draws a lot of cards, but more importantly, she allows you to manipulate the top amount of cards depending on how many Battle Sister cards you have on the field, with different names of course. So the idea for this deck is that you want to run as many different Battle Sister cards so your power lanes are much higher and you also have more power in your deck manipulation. Now, we didn't have any real good support cards outside the already present Battle Sister cards, and some of them are iffy to some extent. But these new cards, they change things quite a lot. So let's take a look at the brand new grade 1 support card that will empower Fromage. And the first one of those cards is Battle Sister Torijas. And Torijas has the abilities Auto Vanguard the Vanguard Circle. When placed, reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a Battle Sister, you may add it to your hand. This ability may only be used by a card with the same card name once a turn. So basically, this could potentially be a free plus. Now, in Oracle Think Tank, this is actually pretty easy to fulfill because you can easily manipulate the top cards, so you can either see them, so you know what's on top, and then call this thing and immediately draw the Battle Sister card. And a free plus is really good for the Battle Sister archetype because it's a more aggro tool deck, so you want to be as aggressive as early on as possible and you want to swarm the board as consistently as possible, so a free plus like this works quite handy. But we can do a lot more interesting things with this card. One of those things is of course the synergy with Fromage, because Fromage can manipulate the X amount of cards. You can put maybe criticals, maybe not on top, as you can put maybe one Battle Sister above it, then call this grade 1 and immediately draw that Battle Sister card so you get more pluses. But you can also be more early active, because you have the grade 2 Battle Sister Choquette that allows you to search your top 5 cards for a grade 3 and put it on the top. Now, it doesn't really do anything because you just put it on top so you cannot immediately draw it, but with this new grade 1, you can immediately draw that grade 3, which most likely will be Fromage in your Battle Sister deck. And that means that in the early game, you can manipulate your top deck and increase the consistency of actually getting to your grade 3s. And it's now with a free plus on top of that all. So that's actually pretty nice. And Battle Sister Choquette is a Battle Sister, so it's in archetype as well. Now, of course, she also has a second effect, which is Auto Vanguard Circle. Once a turn, during a turn, if you looked at your deck by a card effect, you may have this unit get power plus 5 until the end of that turn. So she can basically become a 13k attacker or booster, which is really nice because it works with her own effect. So it's very easy to gain more power on this unit, and it also will work around the aggro playstyle of Battle Sister, where you want to come swinging as early as possible. And with this extra 5k power, that means that your early game play can probably overcome a defensive trigger, and especially once you combine this with Fromage, that also gives extra power on those columns. So Torijas, an excellent card for early game potential, and works and scales very nicely in your grade 3 turns with Fromage as well. But then we also have a new grade 2 that builds even on that, which is Battle Sister Trival. And Trival has the abilities Auto Vanguard the Vanguard Circle. When placed from hand, cost Counterblast 1, look at the 3 cards from the top of your deck, call up to one card with Battle Sister in its card name from among them to the rearguard circle and put the rest on the bottom of the deck in any order. So this is once again a plus card. It allows you to gain more value over time, and it allows you to basically gain more value, only in this case it doesn't add it to your hand, it immediately calls to the field, but because you can check top X amount, in this case 3 cards, you have some consistency to actually getting something good. This can be chained off of the grade 1, only in that combo play you have no control over the grade 1, so you have to have some luck that the actual next top card is also Battle Sister to gain more value, but it's a synergy play nonetheless. But more importantly, it's another card that allows you to flood the board or gain more card advantage when placing it. So that's a nice addition in just Battle Sister in general. Now her second ability is Auto Rearguard Circle. When it attacks, if you looked at your deck by a card's ability this turn, until the end of the battle, this unit gets power plus 5k, then costs Soul Blast 1 grade 3, and your opponent cannot cast Sentinels from his or her hand to the Guardian Circle. So again, this is a card that can easily gain 5k power thanks to her own ability, and you can leave it at that. So every single turn, she probably gains an extra additional 5k power, thus, like the grade 1, increasing your overall attack numbers on your columns in the early game as well as the mid to late game, which is really good. But on top of it, it has the Soul Blast grade 3 skill to actually also have a potential finisher in the archetype, because your opponent cannot no longer Sentinel it, and the power can stack quite easily because this gains another 5k power, the grade 1 booster behind it can gain another 5k power, then you have Fromage, which can give the entire column an extra 5 to 10k power, and then also you have the inherent criticals that you're probably going to drive check thanks to Fromage, so that's another extra additional power onto this. So you can see where this stacks up, and then we also of course have the grade 1s, which then could potentially gain even more power. You have the grade 1 that can put itself into the soul to make a trigger worth double the power. You can see where this starts to add up, and suddenly we have a pretty decent finisher that swings with extra criticals and a Sentinel Restrict, while it comes off the back foot of actually early aggression that swings for decent numbers, so your opponent is probably already dwindling their defense capabilities and already at high damage. So even if you don't hit a critical, probably 1 damage is suffice to close the game. So these two new Battle Sister cards actually work really well with Fromage, and it helps to solidify the Battle Sister playstyle and archetype, and we might actually have a pretty solid tier 2 kind of deck on our hands, maybe even better, depends on how place testing results will work out for Fromage. But thanks to these new grade 1 and grade 2, Fromage and Battle Sisters looks a lot better than we saw or thought with only Fromage revealed. So who knows what might be in store for Dauntless Drive Dragon, but that's something we'll have to wait for a future update, as we have no clue about those cards just yet. But what we do know is the brand new Shirayuki card, so let's take a look at that one to understand what Murakumo has to offer with Clan Selection Plus Volume 1. Because here we have the brand new Shirayuki, 6 Flowers of Phantasm Shirayuki. And she is very similar or reminiscent of the old Shirayuki because we have 3 skills and they work somewhat similar to the original Shirayuki, because her first skill is Continuous Deck Drop Zone. This card is also regarded as Fantasy Petal Storm Shirayuki. So what this means is basically it works with the old support card of Shirayuki. So the grade 1, Radiant Madame, and grade 2, your Stealth Girl, Stealth Fiend, Yogatsu Girl, basically synergize with this card. So that makes those cards actually better, because now they have 8 targets to work with. Meaning Yogatsu Girl will probably hit more often now, thanks to the fact that it has 8 targets to choose from. And Radiant Madame will also synergize quite well with this card as well. But then we also have her second ability, which is different than the original Shirayuki because it's auto on Guardian Circle, so this can only be used defensively. When placed, costs Soul Blast 2, choose one of your opponent's front row units, and it gets power minus 30k until the end of that battle. Okay, minus 30k sounds a lot, and it is a lot. It's somewhere between, it's basically a Sentinel critical trigger in guard value for 2 Soul Blast. Now the important thing to take note here is that it's the exact same cost as the original Shirayuki. Both of them cost 2 Soul Blast, and effectively both of them guard for the same amount of shield. Because Shirayuki does 3 attacks, 3 units minus 10k, this is 1 attack minus 30k. Now, the interesting part and the important part to note about this whole thing is that this Shirayuki is really good against forest clans that stack up on a lot of power, or certain decks that have a win condition, like we just talked with Battle System for example, that build up a strong attack with a Sentinel Restrict or some guard, and they win off of that. This Shirayuki is really good against those specific playstyles. Now, this card is really bad against multi-attack clans or clans that swing with high numbers, but they restand them, because this minus 30k only is active for one single battle on one single unit. So the old Shirayuki can spread it among multiple cards, but the minus power stays until the end of turn. So if those units restand in something like Aqua Force, Nova Grappler, Anger Blader, those minus 10k power actually lingers on those units, and you will get more value and could potentially see that instead of minus 30k shield, or you get 30k shield out of Shirayuki, it could potentially be 60k shield or even more if they can restand multiple times. So depending on the scenario, the old Shirayuki might actually be better. And in a scene where we are playing with Gurguid more often, maybe the old Shirayuki is more meta relevant than this Shirayuki in the defensive department. But this new Shirayuki has also a third skill, which might revolutionize the entire deck building aspect of Murakumo, because this Shirayuki has the skill Auto and Vanguard to Rigid Circle once a turn. When your unit attack does not hit, if you have a Vanguard with Shirayuki in its card name, aka this one or the old one, cost counter plus 1, choose one of your opponent's front row units, and it gets power minus 10k until the end of turn. If this unit is on the Vanguard circle, you may call a card with Shirayuki in its card name from your drop zone to an open rearguard circle. So this basically is another way to gain more power onto your units, because that minus 10k is effectively the same as giving your front row a passive 10k buff, because you give your opponent's Vanguard minus 10k, but it also allows the Shirayuki deck to multi-attack. And that rhymes, and it wasn't on purpose, but moving on. What this basically tells us is that we now can build a full Shirayuki deck, because this skill cannot really work in any other engine. This effect isn't as splashable as the old Shirayuki, because it either demands you to be on this Shirayuki or it demands you to be on the old Shirayuki itself. Now, the interesting thing about this card is that it works on Vanguard to Rigid Circle. So depending on the support cards we might get, if we get a grade 1 or grade 2 for Shirayuki that allows you to bounce back Shirayuki cards specifically, then we might actually see some shenanigan plays where we can actually multi-attack, because it specifically states open rearguard circle. So this might be awkward to some extent if we look at it in the scope right now, because the only cards that I can think of at the top of my head that bounces itself or removes it from the field mid-battle is the Yasue Tema, because it retires itself, which synergizes with this, but is that a good synergy? I'm not so sure. But if we get some bouncing effects, then there could be a lot of shenanigans going on, because if we combine this with the old Shirayuki, oh boy! Because what you then can do is, if your opponent is at 5 damage, for example, and they guard your Shirayuki attack, or just any attack and you have a Shirayuki Vanguard, and this thing is onto the field either as your Vanguard or Rigid Circle, you can counter plus 1, minus their Vanguard 10k, and then call the old Shirayuki to the field, and use its ability to then also minus it a bit more with another 5k power, so suddenly they went minus 15k. And if we could synergize this or combo this off even more, depending on what type of support we could get, we can go this even further beyond and maybe chain off multiple attacks. Now granted, this sadly won't work as well with herself, because she doesn't have an on-place effect, but that said, because it's an when the attack does not hit effect, means that if your opponent's at 5 and you call this thing, fire her own effect because you have an open rigid circle, and you attack with it, it still has the potential to trigger this effect. And because your opponent's at 5 damage, you're probably going to resolve it, and your opponent's going to go minus 10 again. So that could mean every single time you might be able to recall this thing, or you have multiple copies on the field, and every time they guard, their Vanguard goes minus 10k power, minus 10k power, minus 10k power, meaning it becomes harder and harder to guard every single attack. Now granted, we see no power gaining with these cards, and it's seen as this demands you to play a full Shirayuki deck. You need to rely on grade 2s and grade 1s that can buff your numbers, because you either have the old Shirayuki and this new Shirayuki has a grade 3s, and they are just 12k. Granted, they gain more power by minusing your opponent's power, but this might not always be the case if you already have a field set up, because most of them have on-place effects, unlike this grade 3 that does not hit effect. So, overall, this is a really interesting card. It opens up the dynamic of having a different type of defensive option, because you can either go for the spreading of the minus 10k power against multi-tech clans or clans that just resend a couple of units, or we can now rely on this card if we're in a more force-heavy meta that just attacks like 2, 3, or 4 times, or we have decks like Gabriel, for example, that have a win condition that builds up a massive beater with a Sentinel Restrict. This card might actually be really, really good against those type of decks because it counters it to some extent. So this could be a very interesting meta call for Murakumo, which means that Murakumo might be permanently meta relevant, and they might not be top tier, but they might be those rogue decks that can come up because they can counter certain win conditions, which is really interesting to think about. Honestly, I wish multiple clans would get these type of cards, because that means you will always have these rogue type of strategies that can counter certain battle plans. But we have to wait and see what happens in the future. Overall, I am very, very excited for this card, and I cannot wait for what the support cards might bring, because whatever those other 2 cards might do for Shirayuki can change the entirety of this game plan. So far, multi-tacking might be possible, but kind of annoying depending on the support cards you're running. But those grade 1s or grade 2s or whatever their grades are going to be, those 2 cards might change it up and might give Shirayuki, and I mean the full Shirayuki deck, actual solid multi-tech potential. But that's something for a future update. But with that said, let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of these new cards for Battle Sisters, as well as this new Shirayuki card, which basically ushers in the new year of Vanguard, because this is Vanguard in 2021. So let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. As always, this video has been brought to you by our lovely patrons over at patreon.com/VanguardInsider. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a Patreon today. But with that said, I'm Mr. Time Leap, and for the first time this year, I will see you guys in the next one.